Badger fans, let's talk biggest storyline, every single position, offense and defense. We got a great guest to chop it up. Football's almost here. What is the one thing we're most interested in every spot? Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much. I'm your host, Ryan Harings. Looking like I'm recording in a closet because I'm in a hotel and I can't get lamps to turn on. It is what it is. But thank you for being here with us. Thank you for always being here with us, helping us build this community up. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the best spot for all of your sports betting, the number one sports book that we use, Major League Baseball, NFL, it's all there. Go over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Let's bring in our guest today. Hasn't been on the show for a minute. We got Kedrick Stumbris jumping in the show. Really do appreciate it, man. I'm sorry that it looks like I'm kind of recording in the dark here, but I am glad that you are here. Let's do this. All right. Biggest narrative, and obviously you can find Kedrick Stumbris over Badger Notes, Scotty Six Pack podcast. He's really, really sharp, really insightful. One of the things I want to do with you is biggest storylines from every single position. What's your biggest narrative? Let's start at quarterback. What is your biggest storyline at quarterback?
I'm going to break away from the convention about Tyler Van Dyke a little bit and talk about I am curious to see what happens with Braden Locke. Whether that means he is playing at some point in time this season, or if he isn't playing at some point in time this season, what that means leading into next fall. I know that there is the idea that he should be the heir apparent at that point, but is there somebody who pushes him in spring practice a year from now? And you're potentially at that point not only losing Braden Locke, but also potentially Landon Locke, depending on the relationship there. I don't think it was the wrong decision based on performance in camp to name Tyler Van Dyke the starting quarterback. But you maybe have a little bit of a hairy situation with Braden Locke. I'm not predicting that. I don't necessarily think that. But I mean, in college football 2024, I think it's something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Do you think it should matter, Landon Locke? Like, do you think in any part of the equation should it matter?
I don't matter for what, naming your starting quarterback in 2024 or
I think just in terms of managing the situation, like, do you need to be worried about Braden Locke because you're worried about Landon Locke, or do you just, in the era of college football where you can also just go get a portal guy, do you need to be so concerned with managing the potential? Because I'll just be honest, like, I think the Locks are a package deal. I think if you lose Braden, I do think you lose Landon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think you can be so concerned with one player and tying it to another, because ultimately this is like the quarterback's the whole deal here with Phil Longo, right? If they can't get that part of the offense moving in the right direction, this project just isn't going to launch. Sorry for the poor callback to the spring game.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think you need to make the best decision for there and now. If it's not Braden Locke, it's not Braden Locke. And yeah, like you said, you go out and you find another guy in the portal. There's you were competitive for guys a year ago. I guess Baylor threw the bag at the guy that you really wanted to begin with, going into the offseason if it wasn't Tyler Van Dyke. But I think they're in a position to play if they need to play. And so you don't let, one guy affect another guy who wouldn't even be your starting quarterback for another 4 years after Braden Locke leaves.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think you can't risk playing a lesser quarterback, or even I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think you bake anything on future recruits that aren't even on campus yet.
No, I think you take it year by year, and it's a what have you done for me lately job, right?
And I want to go right there with you. You just said something I want to actually talk to you about. You said take it year by year. Luke Fickell has said we want to avoid this. We want to avoid almost the transfer portal thing, which to me is almost like a year by year thing. My contention is I don't know if that's such a big deal. Like, is it such a big deal if you continue to go in the portal for a quarterback? And if so, why do so many major programs do that then? You know what I mean? Like, if you look at the landscape of college football, that's what did Oregon do that everybody's lobbying them for? Go to the portal, get a guy, right?
Right.
I just don't know if that's such a detriment.
I don't know if it is either at quarterback in particular, where it's more in terms of how one guy can be a difference maker. I think that position more so than other positions on the football field is analogous to like basketball transfer portal recruiting, right? Where in basketball, because you have smaller roster sizes, you have half the number of guys on the field or on the court. One guy can make such an outsized difference that going to the transfer portal to plug a hole, and that I feel is more analogous to college football than it is to other positions on the field are to quarterback recruiting in the portal. I get it. It makes sense. You definitely you need to find guys who are going to have the height, weight, speed to fill in the holes at linebacker at the front on the offense and defensive sides of the ball. Those guys aren't leaving. You're going to retain those guys after you recruit them from high school. But quarterback, you can go and find those guys because there's a market for them, and quarterbacks know that there's a market for them. And I think there's also a little bit of a market inefficiency in terms of trying to find the right guy to fit the right offense. And you can find that guy in the portal more often than you can kind of guess what a guy's skill set is going to be coming out of high school.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with you there. Now, I think in an ideal world, you hit on a high school kid and he develops in your culture and he develops into a leader because that's what quarterbacks are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that over 3 or 4 years, absolutely. I just don't know if it's such a downside where it's talked about a lot. Let's move to running back. Here's my big narrative here. You, Me, and Dupree. Great movie, sort of. My narrative is the freshman running backs, right? Because I think I know Ches is going to play. I know Tywee is absolutely going to play. I kind of have a feel to what Akers is going to do, which is going to play situationally. To me, the narrative this year is all about how much we're going to see the freshman running backs. I think Dupree might be a tick ahead of Jones, but that's my narrative. Like, how much are those guys realistically going to play? And then if there is kind of a situation where the game's getting out of hand, or we situationally, because Ches is beaten up or something's going on, we need to get reps to somebody, I know for a fact they want to keep those guys happy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the transfer portal era, does that maybe push the needle a little bit away from a guy like Yakimelli towards those freshman running backs?
Yeah, obviously Jackson Akers is a little bit of a different guy because he's a converted fullback, right? And so maybe you see him situationally playing more of an H-back role in this offense. I would be curious to see what that looks like, particularly given that there's not a ton of super great talent at, tight end, say, and, maybe you have a little bit of a substitute there if you could play Jackson Aker a little bit more than you would rely on a tight end this year. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, the running back position. It's how much do those guys play, either because they earn that regardless of injuries, or does Tywee go down for a week? Does Ches go down for a week, or either of these guys go down for longer than that? Or, you get banged up. Every college running back room is going to get banged up throughout the year. And then which running back, and we haven't even talked about Cade Yakimelli necessarily, all guys that have gotten carries, you kind of have a deep room here, and not necessarily one guy who you think is contending for a Heisman. It's not necessarily a running back room of old at Wisconsin, but it feels like you have a solid number of guys in the stable who can go out and run with the ball, which it sets you up for, I think, success regardless of if Tyler Van Dyke is what the offense kind of needs him to be.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Let's shift. Let's take a quick break for our friends of the show. We're going to come back with Kedrick Stumbris, talk about tight end, receiver, offensive line, shift to the defensive side, biggest narrative for each spot on the Badgers 2024-2025 football season. Quick break for our friends of the show. Let's talk about our great friends of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by the incredible people over at Game Time. And don't think about Game Time like a ticketing out. I mean, that's what the ad read tells me to tell you, but I kind of go off script sometimes. Game Time is like your sidekick to adventure, your concierge to what life's great journey can unlock for you. Game Time is the candy store for experiences. Go there, find the best tickets, the best experience, the best prices, the biggest inventory. You don't got to plan ahead, which for me, I am an ADHD non-planner. My wife complains about it and secretly pines for somebody who plans a little bit better than I do. Right now, go over to Game Time, get those tickets. You don't have to plan. You get better prices. You get a bigger inventory. It is incredibly simple and easy over at Game Time, the platform that has all your sports tickets, entertainment tickets. You have panoramic views of the seats, so you know exactly what you're looking for. It's simple. It's easy. It's fast. Save money, time. and create experiences with Game Time. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's $20 off what's already going to be a great price. What are you doing? Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Today's episode also brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. Listen, FanDuel does nothing but be there for the people, the fans, the people that use their platform. They have incredible things going on right now. Football season's coming up. You're not going to want to miss this one. Right now, FanDuel has a great opportunity anytime between now and September 22nd. So you got a little bit of time here, but don't sleep on it. Between now and September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube and YouTube TV. Football's here. Enjoy it. Let's do this together and get a little free trial. Get a few weeks of free football with FanDuel. Bet $5, get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. With YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Download America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. I also want to remind everybody, college football is here. Locked On College Football has got you covered with a big, huge live season preview. Tuesday, 7 p.m., August 20th, Locked On College 24 streaming YouTube channel. 4-part series tackles all the biggest conferences, realignment. Go visit Locked On's College 24/7 channel. Get the biggest and best and most in-depth season preview you're going to find anywhere. All right, let's get back to the show. Really, as always, appreciate you guys sticking in there, being part of this community. Thank you so much. All right, welcome back to Locked On Badgers. We got Kedrick Stumbris. Kedrick, as always, you are most welcome on the show. Where can people find your work and what you got going on?
Yeah, me and the old Badger Notes crew are all writing over for Athlon Sports these days, the old Athlon Sports All Badgers site. So you can find us there at All Badgers and find me on Twitter at Kedrick Stumbris, just spelled phonetically. Don't throw an N in there. That's number one crime. You can also find my podcast, Scotty Six Pack, talking Badgers, Brewers, Bucks, Beyond. We broke down the Milwaukee Bucks schedule release on the episode we just released today, wherever you're listening to the show.
All right, let's talk. We're definitely, as a Suns fan, we're definitely not talking any Bucks on here. Let's go to tight ends. Giannis stole that title from me. One of the forever performances. Let's talk tight ends. What is your big narrative at tight end?
I think it's, does Tucker Ashcraft take a big step forward this season? I think we kind of know what Riley Nowakowski is. We've seen 5-6 years of him. I think he's going to be a solid performer for this offense, but does Tucker Ashcraft take the bull by the horns and become a receiving threat for this offense? I think between him and maybe even Grant Steck earning there, it's hard for young tight ends to really break into the offense, but does somebody break through here when there was not really a threat at tight end last year to speak of as a receiver? And I think Tucker Ashcraft is the best candidate to fill that role this year.
Yeah, my narrative is I just think we're another year. I just think it's another year away. And
I think you're probably right.
I love Steck, and I really like Booker as what he could be, and obviously Jackson coming over from LSU. There's upside there. It just feels like this. What's the difference ultimately if you have Tucker Ashcraft or maybe a Riley Nowakowski, or as you mentioned, Jackson Aker, and then if you're on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. Do you want Ashcraft out there, or do you want Tretch, or do you want another one of the receivers, or do you want two backs in the backfield? And maybe you can do it some Dupree and Aker stuff. I just feel like, listen, Ashcraft's absolutely going to play. He's going to help set the edge. He's going to be a solid blocker, and I think he could catch 10, 12, 15 balls maybe and be kind of a nice outlet. But I don't think there's anything there this year that really moves the needle. So my narrative there is I think we're a year away.
And I think that's reasonable, especially when you have really reliable guys in the wide receiver room to handle the middle of the field, like Will Pauling, to where you maybe don't necessarily need to worry about filling the middle of the field with the tight end as much when you're really confident in the guys you have in the backfield and at wide receiver. And look, Darian Dupree, he looks twitchy enough to make some stuff happen out of the backfield as well as a little bit of a check down receiving threat too. Yeah, despite the tight ends not being necessarily up to snuff, I think the offense is probably going to be fine despite that. But yeah, I think you're right. It's probably a year away for that room to really crack kind of the game plan on offense.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree with your point is I don't think it's a huge deal this year. I actually agree with, I think it's a year away, and I don't think it really moves the needle negatively that much for the Badgers. So Now, I'm sure he talked to Phil Long and he said, hey, but what if you had an elite tight end? He would say, well, that would move the needle.
Yeah.
So I guess there's give and take there. Offensive line, let me start there. My narrative is this the buoy or the anchor, right? Is this because I think if this group can stay healthy, I think it could be like the maybe best starting group on the team. Maybe I haven't actually thought about who the best starting group would be. I think it would be in that conversation for me with linebacker, maybe cornerback, maybe running back. But I think the starting five is really good. I think really, really good potentially. But could it be the anchor? Because if you lose two guys, I think this unit could sink the team if you lose two guys, especially if one of those guys is Renfro.
Yeah. And that's where I think you have the potential with Renfro in particular. You have the potential to make the biggest like immediate difference via a one player substitution this year. And that's not like Tanner Bortolini. Look, he got drafted fairly highly. It looks like he's gonna maybe even stick at center in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if there's something that just didn't quite click in the offense with him at that position here last year. I don't know, but look, if Renfro can come in and do what we had all hoped he was going to do last year, but also like he hasn't played football for 2 full years. You hope that there is a potential there to get a big immediate jump in play just by substituting that player, and who I think you hope you have a big immediate jump in play, despite it being the same player, is hopefully Jack Nelson. I mean, this time last year, we're talking about him being potential first round draft pick, and that was not anywhere near close to this discussion by the end of the season. You hope you get a little bit more solid play from him, because if that is the case, I think you're right that this is potentially the best starting unit on the team.
Well, it's low stuff, like it's little stuff in the weeds, but him going to media day makes me feel incredibly good about like they're not sending him unless he really attacked this offseason the right way.
Yeah.
I think he came back. I think he's going to be really good, actually. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Ibotta. Listen, summer's expensive. Kids are expensive. Life is expensive. Expensive things are expensive, and kids know they're expensive. Summer, flip-flops, barbecues, vacations, trips to the beach, toys, birthdays, et cetera, back to school. Oh my gosh, it's expensive out there, guys and gals. Listen, Ibotta is here for you. Ibotta is an app that gives you cash back on stuff you're already buying. Let's TiVo that back. Cash back on stuff you're already buying. There's no downside. Average Ibotta user gets $256 back per year just by doing the things you normally do. That's enough to buy a Melvin Gordon signed jersey. Right now, Ibotta is offering you $5 for free for just trying Ibotta. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store, Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. College football listeners, we are back. College football is back. Locked On has got you covered. There is a giant Locked On preview, live season preview, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, August 20th. Let Locked On guide you through the start of the college football season. Go check out the streaming Locked On College 24/7 YouTube channel on Amazon, Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's go defensive line. Let's start with you. What's your defensive line narrative this year?
I cannot wait to see what James Thompson Jr. is going to do this year. I think he has been kind of quietly. He is for the conversation we had at the beginning about quarterback, and you can transfer guys in, you can kind of have turnover there. James Thompson Jr. is the quintessential college football player of old, where he has quietly waited his turn, redshirted, saw 7 snaps of action his second year in the program, then started 7 games of action his third year in the program. As other guys on the defensive front left the scene, he got to fill a big hole last year when Keanu Benton left, and then what I think led the defensive line in tackles for loss last year. All of a sudden, right, a guy who is not a super high heralded recruit, but now is, an awesome vocal leader on that line too. Just a really fun guy to listen to speak about football. I am excited to see what he can do. Setting the edge, doing something up there. It'll be really fun, I think, watching him play.
Well, and a guy who watched several of the players he had played with and kind of grown with transfer out too, right? Like obviously Gio and Rodas, guys like that left to go to other places. Turns out we had several SEC linemen on the roster last year. No, I think that's a really interesting one. My narrative I wrote down, and people kill me for being too negative on the defensive line, and I don't think I am. I'm very much in a wait and see. And my narrative is there an NFL guy on that line? And I don't mean in 3 years. Like I think guys like Willer and Dillon have tremendous upside, right? And I even I think Curtis Neal has made jumps, and he could be a guy. I like Brandon Lane a lot from what we saw. But I don't think you can have a really good, legitimate top tier defense in college football against the top tier schedule unless you have like an NFL dude on the line. And it doesn't have to be Chase Young. Like it doesn't have to be the second pick in the draft. Is there a top 3 pick that's going to be in the 2 deep this year? Like top 3 rounds?
Yeah, and I don't think so. And I think you're right when you look at, and this is a couple steps of correlation here. If people need to slow down from listening on 1.5 speed or something. But one of the positions that when you look at recruiting rankings, right, how accurate the correlation is between a high recruiting ranking to your NFL draft position, where you're actually getting drafted. One of the places we have the highest correlation between that recruiting ranking and your NFL draft stock, actual pick slot, is defensive line. Also, we know that there is a much higher correlation between recruiting rankings in the aggregate on the defensive side of the ball and defensive performance than there is for recruiting rankings on the offensive side of the ball and offensive performance. You can kind of scheme your way around lower recruiting rankings on offense. Can't quite do that on defense. So yeah, you need to have freaks up front to perform on defense, and those freaks up front are going to go to the league. And I don't know that we necessarily have guys up front who are going to go to the league this year, despite how exciting it is to have some of these old guys who have grown into the program year over year that I'm excited to watch because I've been a fan of the program for so long. I don't necessarily see the defensive line as the strength on the defense.
Well, I do think, that's a great point on your part too, with the recruiting rankings correlating to basically defense is a much easier 1-to-1. I do think maybe James Thompson could be a Matt Henningsen type player. Is that crazy? He was a 5th round pick. I mean, I
don't think that's crazy. A guy who gets. I think the downside is right because is he in his 5th year in the program, 6th year in the program? Those guys are harder to get. I know we're getting into NFL draft nerdery, but like those guys get drafted at a lower rate because you just have less years of production out of them by the time they're that old, right? That's why you get to the league, you try to get there early. I don't know. Maybe he would stick on a roster at the back end, but I don't know if that age hurts him.
Now let's go outside linebacker. I'll let you lead this one off. Outside linebacker narrative you're most interested in here.
I think is this a strength of the defense or not? Is a really big question, and maybe the biggest narrative on the defense as a whole. You have really exciting guys like Leon Lowry, even guys at the lower end of the 2 deep like John Pius. I think there's a potential for some of these really athletic guys to make a big difference on this defense, but we have to see it against this level of talent. And I just don't know whether or not to believe the camp performance out of this position in particular. I think it's one of the hardest ones to judge based on the Wisconsin offense versus the Wisconsin defense. I don't know. We saw a lot of blitz heavy packages on Saturday, that last open practice, where at the beginning of the day, the defense was performing really, really well. And then the offense started picking it apart a little bit later. And so I think we saw maybe more push and pull in camp out of the outside linebacker spot than we did any other spot on the defense.
Yeah, for me, and I agree with you, man. I think it's really hard because early on we read a lot of reports, the outside linebackers, guys like Pius, Lowry, really giving the tackles trouble, running by them, not being able to hold up. And it's so hard in one-on-one drills to really judge that. It's not really a fair competition. And I actually think our tackles will be pretty good. So that should make you feel good about those outside rushers. And then you go to camp, and there were moments where I thought the tackles played really well. And there were moments where I felt like they were standing up, Pius and Lowry and those guys. So I don't really know. I kind of want to zoom out and this is more of a linebacker narrative for me. I'm curious how well this staff is at picking out talent in the transfer portal. And this is the one area.
Yeah.
transfer portal talent, it's talent, but it's also fit. It's talent, but it's also culture, right? It's a unique new thing in college football to some degree, and I'm very curious because this is the area they attacked. 5 linebackers. How well did they do fixing this hole? Because we've seen other teams. You can't just go and get guys paste over it and it's going to fix the leak. It's not that simple. So I think for me at linebacker, I just want to see, did they pick the right guys? Is this transferable in year one? Because last year it didn't really work at receiver. They tried that a little bit at receiver last year, and it didn't really work. So, and we were hyped for receiver last year. I mean, I remember those shows. I've deleted them from the Locked On library. Nobody can find those anymore. No, I'm kidding. Those are there. You can go look up my take that this is the deepest receiver room the Badgers have had in 15 years. But that's my big thing. Like, how well did they fix this issue? How well did they identify the talent and the culture fits?
Yeah, and you hope after everything you went through, like, if only because of the emotional labor you had to put in to secure some of these guys, like Leon Lowry, right? You hope you're getting a return on that investment. And if you didn't, I mean, still, it's a recruit and develop side of the ball. You have to pluck a lot of these guys out of high school, and regardless, you had to try something different than just what was there last year. So you hope that the talent evaluation does stick out of the portal to pick up, I think, a position that certainly left something to be desired last year.
Let's shift inside linebacker. For me, this one is Chaney. Like, I'm fascinated by Jake Chaney. I couldn't think of a great leadoff. Like, I was going to go with Gandalf the Grey comes back to lead the troops, whatever it is. But I'm just fascinated by Chaney because he's a guy that I think he looked worse last year because of everything that was around him. But I can't prove that.
Yeah.
But I think with more pieces around him, he's a coach's kid. His coach is on Colorado staff as a player development guy. I think he has the right. And he reminds me a ton of Chris Orr. I'll just say, he reminds me a ton of Chris Orr. And I think he's going to have like a Chris Orr, not necessarily the numbers, because I think there's so many pieces there they can mix and match a little bit more. But I think he's going to have that type of impact when he's in there. Yeah,
and I think bringing up like he's a coach's kid, it shows too every time that he speaks. He has such great football IQ, and the more I watch football and try to like appreciate defense over the years, the more I come to appreciate the inside linebackers in particular, because it is just between figuring out when it is you need to be playing the run or dropping back into coverage. It's such a hard position to play. And Jake Chaney just seems to have his head on exactly right to do the job. And between the brain he has, as well as the aggressiveness that he has to lead the team and stuff the run at times, he's really fun. And plus right behind him, you got guys like Tackett Curtis, right? Just wait, which should be a lot of fun. He is an absolute athletic freak, right? He is one of these guys that you get excited about, not just now, but hopefully on draft day too. So it's a nice little yin yang in that room, almost, where you have the old wise guy who you hope is giving a lot of that wisdom into the young, spry, exciting Tackett Curtis, just waiting to really show out as well for Wisconsin.
Well, and Allegro and Jancy too. Like there's a young trio there that.
Yeah, there really is.
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, let's go cornerback. Lead me off with cornerback here.
I think the narrative for this to kind of take a cop out is going to be set against Alabama. This is a team where like Jalen Milroe is going to throw the ball down the field, and these guys are going to be tested really quickly once that comes around, and you're not going to get a lot of ramp up to that after playing Western Michigan, who is not very good, a South Dakota team that could be a little bit frisky. That's not a terrible FCS program. But these corners are going to be tested hard in the Alabama game. And I am not necessarily, I think Nysier Fortgreen has grown into his role on this team incredibly well. But in that game against Alabama, you might remember really quickly that 2 years ago, Nysier Fortgreen was playing not G5 football, not FCS football, was playing D2 football. and there's good football at every level. And Nizer Fort Green was good at D2, obviously an All-American, and I think it is a Big Ten caliber player. But I really hope that we're not seeing him look shell shocked in that game against guys who even in his 1 year in the Big Ten, Alabama's got dudes that I don't think anybody else in the Big Ten necessarily has. Maybe aside from when they saw Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. So I think really we're going to find out the narrative in that cornerback room in what is that, week 3?
Yeah, those Bama receivers coming in are young, but every one of them is a 4 or 5 star guy. Like they have some burners. I wrote down something similar, so I think we're on the same page with this one. What I wrote down for the narrative is, do they need help? Right? Because if for the most part, and I don't even know if I might push back a tick. Alabama, and this is something Curtis Holland, who comes on the show once in a while, talks about. He said, because I was talking about the rush defense, I'm like, man, I'm kind of worried about how we're going to match up interior wise with Bama, especially if Milroe starts running the ball. He said, listen, Bama's kind of a one-off. I think with the receivers, maybe they are too. So I don't know if I'm going to put it, if the cornerbacks don't hold up great there, but when we're playing Purdue, when we're playing Oregon, when we're playing USC, when we're playing even Nebraska has a few weapons now. They went in portal. Can our cornerbacks hold up for the rest of the year and not need Wohler, not need Austin Brown, not need Kamoy Latu to provide some help? And if they can for the most part, then I feel a lot better. But if maybe it's just Rico and then we need to roll coverage over to Nazir, or then everything else kind of falls apart to some degree. So
yeah, that's super true. Plus, I mean, it not at risk of I don't know if you wanted to do a safety narrative too, but like at risk of if you're gonna roll over Hunter one way, right? Is where does that leave Kamoy Latu on the field too? When he was a little bit of a concern last year if only from a physicality standpoint, from being able to bring guys down. And I think fortunately, not to make this all about the Alabama game, but like you got to feel fortunate that Isaiah Bond is at Texas now, right? All of my in-laws are either Texas fans or alums, and they're stoked to have him over there, despite the horrible injury situation at Texas. But we don't need to make this a Texas podcast. Like you're glad he's gone, but they still got Caden Proctor. They still got Kobe. That's a really good offense there, and if only for this, I think the Alabama game is a really interesting measuring stick to figure out. All right, do we have the types of guys in certain positions that are gonna make this Luke Fickell transition successful as the years roll on? And I think the measuring stick this year versus what the game will look like in Tuscaloosa a year from now, I think will be, just rife with conversation when that second game comes around.
Yeah, I think you're right as a measuring point for a lot of reasons, that Bama game. I think our defensive line, I think our offensive line, Van Dyke, our corners.
Particularly if people really want this to become a college football playoff caliber program again, right? Yep. Like it's, yeah.
Go safety. You already kind of hit on it a little bit, but I'll give you mine. And I titled it "Less is More." I really think we need a version of this defense where Hunter Wohler makes like 80 tackles, but he's flying around the field, right? He's put in more disruptive situations. He's not taking body blows by tackling Big Ten running backs 10 times a game because our linebackers, they're not getting to the edges, like whatever it is. I think Hunter Wohler could be in line for a great year is my bigger point. That might statistically look, at least from a tackle perspective, like a little bit less.
I think that's right. And you hope that's Kamoy Latu picking up some of those tackles if necessary. But really you don't want a lot of these safeties to have all these tackles, like you said. Yeah. I think to me, I have a hard time just looking at the safety room and not trying to gush about Hunter Wohler. Frankly, I don't know how you don't come with a narrative that is just not just, oh my God, I want Hunter Wohler to go out there and like make himself an argument to be a first round pick. I don't think that's going to happen. But like he should be able to go out there and make darn sure that he doesn't slip past day 2. I think that is like arguably, I think it's strange based on how I felt coming into the season a year ago, but I think maybe the secondary as a whole is the stronger part of this defense now, when a year ago I thought it was probably the weakest link. But after we got a standout season from Hunter Wohler, same thing with Ricardo Holman, I think we could maybe see these guys really going out there and making plays. And I know we were plenty excited about Hunter Wohler coming into last year, but maybe this one last year that we get him could be a really awesome swan song. And if there's just one or two standout plays that make the difference between this team, being 7-5 versus 8-4, I'm probably banking on Hunter Wohler to make those plays.
Over under 2.5 NFL draft picks out of the secondary next year.
Next year, right away.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the secondary.
I'm assuming Rico leaves, by the way. He's a junior, but
yeah, I think that's right. I think I would. Oh, so I guess what the question is: does Nazir get picked up on day 3?
Yep. He's got the right ratio. He's got the right 6'1".
Yeah.
I think he's going to run okay. He's pretty fast. I think he's a 4-5 guy probably.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say yeah. I guess I'll take the over there. I could see a spot for him. That could change, but I mean, even if the fact that we're even talking about it at all, I think is exciting. And he has the instinct that, like, when you just are able to read reports about him out of camp or just watch him, he has something to him that is just a little bit instinctual that makes you think he could be a guy who hangs, like, somebody takes a flyer on him in the NFL. Maybe he hangs out on a practice squad for a few years, just kind of the right guy to fit in the league without causing a problem. That would be good. I could see taking that over 2.5.
Which means you got 3 NFL guys in the secondary. How's this team going to lose? Like, what are we talking about? It's incredible.
That's true. That's true.
I realize as I'm recording in the hotel room here and on my scratch pad on the side, and it is kind of unnerving watching myself in this dark thing, this darkness. I feel like if I fade back, I'm going to just disappear from view. I forgot receiver. So let's finish up on receiver. Narrative on receiver. I just think to me it's Tretch. Like, I think that's the easy one. And then I think there's a couple ways to go with this, but there's been so much hype, not just this year, for I feel like a year and a half on Tretch. And there's been so much buzz from inside the program, from outside the program, from recruiting analysts, from people watching little cut-ups in film, from snippets we saw in LSU. Like, what's it going to look like? We have to now's the time. Like, what's it going to look like? How's it going to be utilized? How's it going to play with Pauling? How are they going to use the two of them? I think to me it's Tretch. I just, as a fan, like you mentioned it earlier, being exciting is just worth the price of admission at times. Being fun, we were talking off air about Daniel Freitag. There's something unique just about being exciting and fun, and that's what sports are. Tretch can bring some pop. He can bring some excitement to this team. He can bring some big playability. That's my narrative. I can't wait to see Tretch play. Yeah,
and I think that's what this staff is hoping to see from him on special teams too, right? They've made him the number 1 punt returner. If and when he gets his chances on offense, does he play himself out of that punt returner role potentially, right? They say, no, you're too valuable on the full offensive side of the ball to have you out there fielding punts. I don't necessarily think that'll happen this season, but like, if he pops, is real shifty on offense and can do it, like maybe there's becomes an outsized role for him. They figure it out. Phil Longo strikes me as a guy who, when he has enough weapons out there, he is kind of salivating to get into the lab and figure out how to get all these guys on the field. But yeah, Tretch, absolutely super exciting. I think narrative wise, were we a year early on our predictions for the wide receiver room? What was all the hype we had coming in to last year unwarranted at the time, but definitely warranted now when some of these guys have really started to flourish. Tretch, Will Pauling, Vinny Anthony, CJ Williams, like you said, just guys with exciting names at this point, as we've been gushing about them for a year and a half. I am excited to see what this room can hopefully do, because I think we have suffered for a few years too long being excited about athletes in the wide receiver room without an ability to get the ball their way. I mean, I was just watching highlights from Wisconsin, Minnesota in 2019 in that game in the snow.
That was
One of the
the
most,
Snow Bowl, right?
yes,
Oh,
that was one of the, I think that is still to this day the most fun I've had at a college football game. Like actually being at the game, I think it's the most fun I've had at one. The weather, the stakes, Jack Cohn dishing, receivers making plays,
Quintez.
Crookshank and Correndo. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And going back and seeing, look, even with just Jack Cohn being able to deliver balls to receivers, just how much fun it is to watch even the Wisconsin football of old. And so hopefully when you have talents like that in the room again, and hopefully a guy who can actually get the ball over that way consistently, we could have a lot of fun watching this offense this year if Tyler Van Dyke can do it consistently, which will be the harder part of the equation, I think.
yeah, I can't wait, man. We're a few weeks away, not even a few weeks away, from college football's actually starting. First games being played.
What week 0 is this week? We got college football like 4 days from now.
Dude. He is Kedrick Stumbris. Please go check him out on Scotty Six Pack. Go follow that platform, that show, subscribe. Go check him and all of his dudes out over at Badger Notes. We have them on the show whenever they find time in their schedules. They are awesome. Kedrick is awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, this is Locked On Badgers. Appreciate y'all on Wisconsin, and we will talk tomorrow.